Catastrophic Hurricane Maria headed for the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. I'm Mike Naso with the latest on the tropics. You can see we have a devastating Category 5 hurricane still strengthening at this hour in the northeastern Caribbean Sea, and that is, of course, Hurricane Maria. It went over the island of Dominica last night with devastating results, and it is now headed for St. Croix and Puerto Rico, and then down the line, the north coast of the Dominican Republic and the Turks and Caicos Islands should be on the alert, and hurricane watch is now out for the southeastern Bahamas as Maria takes aim. Now here's the latest from the National Hurricane Center in Miami, Florida on dangerous Maria as of 5 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time, which is also Eastern Time. Hurricane Maria was at 16.8 north, 64.0 west. Maximum sustained winds were 165 miles per hour with higher gusts, and the pressure has been falling. The Air Force just reported it's near 912, 914 millibars, right in that range. It's a very, very intense storm in the upper echelon of hurricanes. It's moving west-northwest at 10, and this general motion should bring it near St. Croix in the next 6 to 8 hours, and then on towards Puerto Rico on Wednesday, and then right north of Hispaniola through Thursday, and then near the Turks and Caicos Islands by Friday afternoon, which is why those hurricane watches are now up for those areas in the Bahamas and the Turks and Caicos. After that, we should see a turn to the north, away from the rest of the Bahamas and away from Florida, Georgia. It's still far out. You still need to keep an eye on it. But right now it looks like the brunt of the impact, obviously, is going to be to the Caribbean and perhaps the Turks and Caicos. There's catastrophic Maria on the visible satellite. Since daybreak this morning, it left Dominica, and it fluctuated from a Category 5 to a 4 and then right back to a 5. The waters are very warm, and the environment is great for intensification. Look at that there as the sunlight hits the eastern eye wall there, similar to what we saw with Irma a few weeks ago, and it is right on track. Some of the islands, of course, here is St. Croix in the Virgin Islands, and it's about, say, about 70 to 80 miles away, and then, of course, you have Vieques and Culebra, and then Puerto Rico, the mainland itself, and these are all right in the path of an extremely ominous Category 5 hurricane, Maria. There's the long-range radar loop out of San Juan, and you can see right in here, right in the tiny eye. The one thing, this is a very small hurricane, very, very dangerous, but very small. You can see right in that little core is where those winds are gusting upwards of perhaps 200 miles per hour. And that little core is where the devastation is. So wherever that core goes is where the devastation will head. However, that doesn't mean you won't get heavy weather away from it. St. Croix, you're already getting buffeted. There have been live webcams all day, and you've seen the wave action there getting worse and worse. And if you look here carefully, you can see an outer eye wall beginning to form. So that might not necessarily be good news, because if this inner eye collapses and it fluctuates and a new bigger eye takes shape overnight, that could come right into Puerto Rico, and it could have a farther distribution of its winds across the island. You can see Ponce there, as well as San Juan, St. Thomas, of course, which was devastated a few weeks ago by a different hurricane. You guys are all on the alert. You should be as Maria approaches. I could tell you, as somebody who's tracked hurricanes for a couple of decades, this is about as good as you get. There is such a thing as a maximum potential intensity. And Maria is still intensifying, so even though it's a Category 5 and there is no Category 6, this thing is getting about as strong as any hurricane can get anywhere in the world. Look at it, that last image there, how perfect that little eye has become. It's small, but with the pressure being as low as it is inside that eye, those winds are tremendous. I can tell you right now, let's hope that this thing does not go over St. Croix tonight, because if it does, or if the eye wall does, there will be complete destruction, as we saw with Irma in the Northern Islands a few weeks ago. Now here are the computer models. You can see they're in great agreement. There's not a lot of divergence. Straight over Puerto Rico, north of Hispaniola, buffeting the Turks and Caicos, and then a turn to the north, and then even a turn perhaps out to sea between Bermuda and Cape Hatteras. That is a very common track for hurricanes. Usually it's because of front sweeping down, but this one has more to do with Jose. You remember Jose? Jose's been out there many, many days spinning around. It is still a hurricane with 75-mile-an-hour winds. It is moving north-northeast slowly at 8 miles an hour. Now, Jose, in a way, has saved the United States, perhaps, because by Jose sticking around out here, even as it weakens and looping around, that has caused an opening for Hurricane Maria to turn and avoid the East Coast. Had Jose gotten out faster, we would have seen a ridge rebuild, and this thing, Maria, could have sailed into the East Coast. While it's still a little too far out to rule out the impact, that does appear to be what's going on. There's Hurricane Jose on the visible as the sun starts to set, looking a little bit better organized this afternoon with some convection firing over the center. You can see there's the New Jersey and New York coastlines. It's crazy to think this thing left Africa and with such a monstrous storm approaching the islands, what was it, 10 days ago at least? And now we're watching it sitting off New England. It's just crazy how far these things travel. You can see it's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. And some of the models here, the H-WRF and the UK Met, actually have it coming ashore. Now, whether or not it'd still be tropical or how strong a system, that's unknown, and it's still uncertain. It could be much weaker by then, but it is looping around over and over, and that's creating a lot of high seas and gusty winds. So be on the lookout for some rainfall. We're already starting to see some indication of that on the radar imagery. You can see here in the northeast some showers over Long Island and areas of Rhode Island and Connecticut. You guys are getting a little bit of rain, and that is an association with Jose. So Jose is out there. You can see the stronger bands still offshore. We'll see where it heads from there. Could see some rainfall. This is the forecast for the next 2 days. You could see maybe a couple of inches near areas of Boston or Cape Cod if Jose ends up taking that track looping around. But the heavier amounts, the 6 to 10 inches, should remain offshore at least for right now as Jose sits and spins. Look at the upper level environment over Hurricane Maria though. The very low wind shear represented by the greens. You can see that right over the top of the hurricane yesterday, which allowed that rapid intensification. When you combine that with the small size of the storm and the warm waters, look at how it has carried that. Yesterday, today. Yesterday, today. If anything, if you look at the upper environment, it's actually a little more favorable today than it was yesterday, with that upper level low weakening and backing off in the Caribbean. So we have that kind of good outflow and a well-defined, organized center, and that is why Maria has been able to strengthen so much in the last day in the Caribbean Sea. Hurricane Maria might make landfall as a Category 5 hurricane in Puerto Rico, is forecast to, and the last time that happened was 1928. Okay? You're talking 89 years. Now, is it possible that there's somebody in Puerto Rico in their 90s who remembers that storm from when they were a kid? Maybe, but it's starting to really get hard to find anybody with living memories of a hurricane like this. But they have happened, and they'll happen again. Of course, that went on to hit Lake Okeechobee and kill thousands of people. Maria, fortunately, it looks like, will be able to turn to the north and spare America. But right now, we just don't know. Everybody needs to keep an eye on this. I understand there's been a devastating earthquake in Mexico City, and of course, everybody's watching that with great concern. But if you're in Puerto Rico and St. Croix, you guys need to be on the alert. Rush all preparations to protect life and property from a devastating 7 to 11 foot storm surge and catastrophic winds. Hurricane Maria approaching St. Croix in Puerto Rico. I'm Mike Naso, and I'll talk to you guys next time.